Welcome everyone to the Gears of War Judgment World Premiere Live event. I'm Larry Herb, Xbox Live's Major Nelson, with Xbox Live's Tina Summerford.
That's right, we are live, and Gears of War Judgment was announced nearly a year ago at E3 2012. We were there. Now I know quite a bit already, like the testimony-based single-player campaign and the new Locust versus COG competitive multiplayer mode, Overrun, but there's still a few choice secrets lurking in Judgment's shadows. So Larry, tonight we're gonna pull back the curtain, answer a whole lot of your questions, and unveil a few very, very exciting surprises for the Gears faithful.
All right, now we have two major world premiere reveals in store for you tonight. We'll also be chatting live with senior producers Chris Wynn and Alan Van Slyke from Epic Games right here in studio.
Yes.
Now, if you're watching this live at home, be sure to post your questions on Twitter using the hashtag GearsJudgment. We'll be picking your questions from the hashtag to ask live throughout the show. Plus, we'll be taking your tweets throughout the show, putting them up on screen, so be sure to share your reactions to the game as well as tonight's reveals.
Wow, super community-driven show for you guys.
Plug right in.
Now also, if you are watching live, don't forget you still have roughly 15 minutes to enter for your chance to win a custom Gears of War Judgment console. Now, you cannot buy this in the store, correct?
Absolutely not.
And we're also going to give away some copies of the game, which will be available at launch time.
Now listen, you can find all the details on how to enter right now at my blog at majornelson.com.
Yes.
Now, Tina, I want to ask you, you had some time down in North Carolina, right at Epic Games where they make the game.
Yes.
How'd that go?
It was great. It was a great trip. I spent about 4 days, had a chance to talk to Alan and Chris, that you're going to be taking their live Q&A a little bit later in the show.
Yep.
But I also got a chance to sit down with Chris Perna. Now, he's the art director. He's been there since the very, very beginning. So not only did he do Judgment, the whole franchise is really his vision. So that was a great conversation, which you'll also get to see later on the show.
And I heard you also spent some time.
Are you about to call me out?
Yes, I am. My understanding that you spent some time in the playtest lab.
I did, and
How'd that go?
I got reamed. I just, as honest as I could be, I got killed over and over for hours and hours, but I had a great time doing it, and they were the men and women that made the game, so I really didn't have a shot at it. But the whole trip was really about survival and aftermath. So really, without further ado, here is our very first world premiere this evening, the unlockable bonus campaign mode, Aftermath.
The easiest way to describe what the Aftermath campaign is, in the context of Gears of War 3, near the end of the game, Marcus and Dom go off in one direction toward Azura, and they send Baird and Cole off to find some supplies.
All right, Baird, Cole, you go find reinforcements. We need transport, weapons, and anyone who can fight.
It just so happened that they went to Havel Bay to go find those reinforcements, and so we had all the pieces kind of put together, and it was like, you know, let's go tell that particular story from Gears 3. You run into Paddock, who's one of the new characters in Judgment, because he's still hanging around that city.
Only COG soldiers are this noisy. Paddock?
That sidearm can go back where you found it.
I think it's really neat to see Paddock inserted into this point in the timeline of the Gears story. And it takes you back, and I think it's a point in time that everyone's going to be excited to see. Ultimately, it's a reward for fans.
Paddock is a Groznian guy. He's kind of the grizzled veteran, former UIR soldier, right? So yeah, he was opposing the COG in the Pendulum Wars, and then when the treaty was signed, right around the time of Emergence Day, he came over to fight for the COG.
Again, it's just a continuation of the story, and just peeling back the onion layer just a little bit deeper to see what else happened during that traumatic time.
We built Aftermath in as an unlock. And so to unlock it, you earn stars. When you play through the main Judgment campaign, you're scored every section that you play through. We have a series of 3 stars that you can earn. You earn those stars by getting ribbons, you know, headshots and executions and those kinds of things. Also just by playing through the mission. If you take a declassified mission, that will boost your stars.
The declassification system changes the way that you play. It's an optional system that you can choose that'll actually add challenge and make it even more intense than, than it previously was. It also changes the testimony and changes the way that the story is told.
The dust gunked things up pretty good, and the grubs were going in for close kills. Basically,
the very core, the very foundation of what we're trying to do in Judgment is all built on intensity. What led up to that is we had a lot of feelings that games get a little bit too easy these days, right? It's more about the experience as opposed to the challenge. To make it more intense, there's some specific things that we did. One of those is the smart spawn system, and so this was a whole thing that we engineered so that when you get into a battle, when you come into an encounter, what you face will be different every single time.
You might play through once and get, tickers and maulers as you kind of like lay back, and then you play through again and you push forward, and now you have wretches and different enemies flanking you. So lots of intensity happening in this game.
Systems like the Smart Spawn system are really cool for us as designers. I mean, yes, it's a challenge because it forces us to think in a different way. In the past, we could always say, okay, X, Y, Z is going to happen, and then when this ticker explodes, then the door is going to open and a boomer's going to walk out, and we can script that experience. So it forces us to rethink a lot of the areas. In a way, I really like that because it gave us the ability to put more story and more context into the environments and into the world itself, which really helps bring the universe to life a lot more. And I think that's a much better story than anyone we could ever tell, because it's a story that the player themselves gets to tell and experience.
For us, it's a process of evolution. We don't want to just give the same experience over and over again, because that's really an injustice to the fans. And we want to make sure that we're delivering something that's progressing, not just both from a story standpoint, but from a franchise standpoint, but also from a gameplay standpoint.
We are joined by Chris Wynn and Alan Van Slyke, senior producers for Gears of War Judgment at Epic Games. Guys, thanks so much for joining us. Got to tell you, that looked fantastic. Now, we just saw the world premiere of Aftermath, but let's take a step back. I want you to tell us about the main campaign. Who's Kilo Squad, and what is their mission? Alan, you want to take that?
Yeah, so Kilo Squad, a couple of characters you already know, familiar to the Gears franchise. Barrett and Cole. These are the characters that, the Gears fans said, we want to hear more about these guys, and so let's explore more about them. And then the squad is rounded out with two new characters. We have Garen Paddock, who's a former grizzled UIR veteran, been in the trenches, but came over to help the COG fight the Locust after Emergency. And then we have Sophia Hendrick, who's kind of a fresh-faced Onyx Guard cadet graduate, but hasn't seen any battle yet.
Any real action?
Absolutely.
Great. Now we've got some announcements coming up. Chris, tell us about some of the announcements that you guys have made recently.
Yeah, it's really exciting these days. When you make a game, you finish it up, you get it in the box and out to stores, and you continue to develop. We release content after the fact, and so we announced just last week we did a deal with Maxim Magazine to be able to bring 2 free maps to our fans. Mm-hmm. And then including in that, we actually adding back execution modes. So this is a fan favorite mode. They really asked for it to come back in Judgment, so we were able to do that, partner with Maxim, and bring that to people pretty early on. And then we also announced the details of our DLC plan. So we're going to add 6 new maps and even 2 new additional modes, and then that's all wrapped up in a season pass, so you can get a discount on the whole thing.
So wait a minute, I get my season pass, I get access to all the content, I get a discount, and I get double XP?
You do, yeah, you get double XP forever.
Right.
So as long as you play in those VIP playlists, you're going to get double XP.
Right.
You also get the content early. You're going to get it before everyone else, which I think is really cool. And then, of course, we added in some skins and characters that you'll get just by being a VIP.
There's a lot going on there. All right, we're going to go, what we're going to do right now, the community has just voted on the gameplay they next want to see. We're doing this live. This is live television. We're kind of going by the seat of our pants. What you have chosen on Twitter is Domination. So Chris, Alan, let's bring up Domination here in the studio. We've got some gameplay here, and I want you to talk us through what we're seeing. Why don't you go ahead and do that?
Yeah, Domination is a brand new mode we have in multiplayer, and so this is kind of an evolution of King of the Hill. Mm-hmm. You have 3 rings that are static on the map. These don't move around like they did in King of the Hill. And then your team's goal is to go capture those rings, and while you're holding them, you earn points, which you can see up there in the upper left-hand side of the screen. And the first team to the score threshold will win the match. And so what you have is it's a bit more competitive than what we had in the past. And we have these really close matches when we play tested in the labs back at Epic. You always know, by having those rings static on the map, and you know where ring A is, ring B is, ring C is, you always know where the action is, you always know where the fight is. And I think that's really one of the beautiful aspects of this mode. You always know where to go to get into the battle.
Well, I noticed that Domination is that, you talked about where to go is in the battle, but it's a choke point. Everyone's being brought there, so you're going to get action on the way there, and then once you're there, it's nonstop, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things, that we've added to all of our multiplayer modes is this new vertical nature to the gameplay. So yeah, there's choke points, but it's no longer just a flat plain choke point. Now people can run upstairs, drop down, and flank you and surprise you. And so there's this whole new nature of strategy to the maps by adding this vertical nature to them.
Tell me a little bit about, you mentioned playtesting earlier. How important is playtesting to a mode like this?
It's massively important. I mean, you have to get the balance right. And so, particular to Domination, when we play test, a lot of it is the location of those rings.
Right.
Right. We want to make sure that the battle is not only fair between the two teams, but they're in the right locations where you set up really good fights. So, for example, this room here, you have 3 entry points. And so when you have one team defending in the middle, you have to kind of make sure you're watching all those entry points.
And you've got some pipes you can duck behind.
Yeah,
as well.
you take cover, of course, and find some really good places to kind of bunker down and defend, which is really important.
Now, so you mentioned there's 3 rings. How does the gameplay progress in terms of the balance, and do I get one, do I move to the other? Tell me a little bit about that dynamic.
Yeah, there's a lot of strategy involved in how you do that. So typically, there's one ring that's kind of near each team's spawn points, and so those are more easily captured, and then there's one that's kind of more in the middle, and then there's a lot more contention for that. So there's a lot of strategy and communication that has to happen to decide how you can essentially hold 2 or more of the 3 at all times so that you're accruing points faster than the other team.
Yeah, and I think one thing that, so we just saw him jump out of a window there, and that was something that Alan was referring to earlier, is this new verticality that we have in our maps. And we also have a bit new approach to level design, which really favors a mode like this. It's a much more circular in terms of its movement, and so you find it's a lot easier to move around as a team and find those choke points and find those battle areas.
Now, I've had the chance to play this game, but one of the things I noticed right off was you kind of did some things with the weapons and the weapon switching. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we optimized the control scheme actually in both multiplayer and the primary campaign. So now Y is a quick weapon swap, primary, secondary, just hit Y, boom, boom, switch back and forth. It really sped up the gameplay. And we've also gotten rid of all the D-pad functionality, moved the grenades to the left bumper. So now you can tap it, quick grenade throw while you're on the run.
But I can still hold it down and get the angle.
Yeah, if you want that traditional trajectory, the aiming arc, you can hold on to it, and you can always put it away too. If you pulled it out and you want to put it away, no problem.
Great, that sounds great. Now listen, we're going to switch gears, so to speak, and go behind the scenes of the art direction in the Gears of War franchise. Tina caught up with art director Chris Pern to discuss the franchise, the visual identity, and how Judgment fits in.
Chris, let's talk a little bit about what we're going to see differently in the art direction from Judgment as we've seen in Gears 1, 2, and 3.
I think for Judgment, we go back to some of the darker Gears. We worked hard to kind of capture the tone of the original, make it a little more moody, things like that. Players, as they move through the environments, they should see kind of mini stories as they move throughout. Something happened in this environment. We kind of wanted to make it a place rather than just a blank environment that you have a battle in, right? There's handprints on the wall and blood trails that lead somewhere. What is this place? What happened here before you got there? Those type of things.
The characters, Baird and Cole, you got to go back and make them younger. What was that process like? Was it fun?
Yeah, that was fun. Yeah. We iterated on those designs for a while. Some of them came easy, some of them were harder. Baird, of course, was a lieutenant before he got bumped down to private, and it was natural for us to kind of take him and clean him up. We upgraded his armor. He's got officer insignia on his armor and things like that. Cole was the same. We took Cole. We said, what would Cole look like during the thrashball days, right? Because he's younger and it's almost a thrashball. So he's more athletic. He's leaner. His face is younger. He's got more hair. Stuff like that. It was kind of fun to evolve those guys. And we wanted this cool Hulk out kind of Locust. And the Rager was fun. He's like this little wimpy, skinny guy that comes out with a weapon, and you kind of fire him. And as he takes damage, he just gets pissed off, and he just starts to flush red, and spikes come out, and he gets nuts. And it was great to develop that character.
And beyond just the artistic stuff, but there's also all the technical aspects of it. The engines change, different animators come in and out. How do you work as an artist with the tech? And does it evolve with the engine?
Right, so it kind of evolves hand in hand. We take a look at what we want to do for the game, and we say, hey, you know, we want a darker, moodier game. What can we do with lighting? What can we do with bloom to give it maybe a more dreamy feel to some aspects of it? We want a lot of fire. How can we enhance flame lighting and flickering lights and things like that? We push the tech to make the art look better. How can we evolve our characters? What can we do to make them look better, make the skins higher resolution, make the shaders better, things like that, that just add to a more robust and immersive experience for the player.
So sort of being in charge of the art direction, I feel like it would be difficult because an artist, I'm sure you want to be hands-on with stuff because you know what you have up here, but how hard is it to pass that on to?
Yeah, it's really hard.
Yeah, like.
Yeah, it's super hard. I'm not only, you know, am I high-level art direction now, but it's I'm a control freak to a certain extent, right? I like what I like, and it's frustrating sometimes for the guys, and sometimes I don't know what I want, right? I mean, an art director doesn't necessarily have all the answers. So sometimes, you know, I get a bad rap, I'm sure, and people are like, what are you doing? You don't know what you're doing, and stuff, but it just takes a while to try and you know, craft that stuff and mold it into something, make something from nothing, basically. You've
been here since the beginning of the franchise, so you were the big influence in what these characters, these larger-than-life characters would be. Where did you get that from?
That was you know, space barbarians, right? It was, you know, the hardcore kind of Conan and things like that. I was really into that stuff. And it just kind of happened. We were like, hey, let's get these huge dudes and these big creatures, but we'll give them guns instead of swords, and we'll see what happens, you know? And it worked out well.
Are there specific design principles that you hand down to them? Like, look, the characters, the weapons, everything has to fall within these design principles?
You know, we set up style guides. The overall description was the world is heavy. Gears is a heavy and brutal game. So everything we put on the characters was meant to convey that weight in the world. We had shoulder pads that flopped around. When they hit cover, they grunt and they slam into it and dust flies out. Stuff like that.
Because it's the emotion of those guys. How hard is it to get the emotion across?
That's really hard. You know, an inanimate character, to get that emotion. In some aspects we did it well, some we didn't. And it all comes down to lighting and mood and facial animation and things like that. And we're getting better at it.